What's up, beautiful people? Christian here from the Successful Spiritualpreneur podcast. And today we have a wonderful guest. Her name is Sara Cousineau. And at the ripe age of 25, Sara found herself in Hawaii, living the dream with an incredibly successful international finance career. It was paradise, except for the stress and burnout, and the feeling that she was continually sacrificing her desire to be truly of service. Choosing to leave her corporate job, shifting from sipping champagne in a bubble bath at one of the most luxurious hotels to living off grid in a tent in the jungle was one of the most freeing decisions of her life. Through her journey, Sara has evolved through education and practice into a holistic nutritionist, yoga, meditation teacher, massage therapist, sexuality and relationship coach, and birth postpartum doula. She coaches women who want to experience more joy, pleasure, and fulfillment in their lives. And Sara also supports women and families on their conception journeys during pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. It's her greatest honor to witness and serve in these moments of powerful alchemy and transformation. And with that, we welcome you to the show, Sara. Welcome to the Spiritualpreneur podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Yay, it's such an honor. And I always love having people on the show that have, just gone through this transition of like, I don't want to be part of this anymore. I want to make this, right?
Mhm.
And for me, that is such a big symbol of transformation and freedom and just this journey of awakening. And there's a reason why this is called the Successful Spiritualpreneur podcast, because on this podcast, we want to interview people who have this spiritual component of doing something entrepreneurially, but also being in alignment with spirit. So tell us a little bit about your story, your path. How did you get into that corporate career, and when did you decide to switch? I mean, you've heard a little bit, kind of like a quick summary of that, but tell us more. Who are you?
Yes, of course. So I think originally I kind of started my life and went through my journey doing what I was expected to do, right? And what I knew how to do through my upbringing, through everyone around me. And the path that that took was to go to university, right? And I didn't actually know what I wanted to study at university. So I decided to study business because I was like, if I want to run my own business one day, that's a good idea. And then when I was in business, we had to make some decisions around what do you want to specialize in. And I still didn't really know, so I decided in some ways, right, let's choose a very difficult path. Let's choose the accounting and finance path. Again, if I wanted to have my own business, I felt that that was important. And it's kind of ironic because it was when I graduated and started going through the actual accounting process. So in Canada, it takes 3 years, and it's kind of like becoming a lawyer. You have to write a bunch more exams, and you're working for a company at the same time. Also, that tea looks so delicious.
I love you.
So in that process, that was when I really realized, okay, I'm studying and working in something that I'm not interested in. So how do I nurture myself and my spirit at the same time? So that was when I did my first studies into anything holistic, and I started with holistic nutrition at IIN, the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. It was an online program. And as I started moving through my career, I started adding in these things where in all of my spare time, I was studying things that actually interested me. Because it felt like up until that point, I had been studying and doing all the things that I was supposed to do, maybe rather than what was really pulling my interest or that I felt fulfilling. And I've always had this desire to serve and to help others as well. And it felt that through these studies, that was kind of more of the path of how I could do that, and had no idea along the way how they were going to come together eventually, right? And as you mentioned, it's kind of like I started with holistic nutrition. I did a yoga teacher training. I became a yoga teacher. I did a couple more trainings, then meditation. Then ultimately, when I finally did break from the corporate world, I went to massage school and became a registered massage therapist, and then did the sexuality and relationship and doula path. But it's kind of like all of those steps were tiny puzzle pieces that are all included in the work that I do today. And looking back, there would have been no way to know that I ever would have ended up in Hawaii, which is where I lived for 7 years, there would have been no way to know that I would have ended up in Egypt, which is where I am now. So it's kind of like this magical, mysterious choose your own adventure of constantly, choosing what felt aligned with my heart. And really, for me, in the beginning, it felt like a lot was not aligned with my heart. And slowly, slowly, I started making choices that were more aligned. And now I live from a place that feels pretty much fully aligned with my heart and my spirit, which is so exciting and I'm so grateful for.
Wow, that's beautiful. And I really connect to that because I also studied international business, and I, went down that path of like, I grew up in Germany, and like, I kind of follow the classical education path of like, I have to study or I want to study. I mean, it's not really that you have to, but it's just like you don't really know what better thing there is to do, right? You come out
Mm-hmm.
from high school so blinded and so miseducated, which I wasn't even aware that I was miseducated. I was just like, just going with the flow. I'm just a human being doing my thing. Um, but I really noticed very quickly that I wanted to do something creative, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
studied business and I was like, what do we do there? Like, we learned about accounting, we learned about marketing, yada, yada, yada. So I chose more the creative fields like marketing and stuff. But it still was quite dumb, right? So I was like, I didn't want to sit in front of PowerPoint or Excel doing stuff. Like, I wanted to really create and be a builder, be a creator. And so I, was looking for ways to just design and create and be, you know what I mean? Like break out of the box and just
Mm-hmm.
working on a computer type thing, right? Um, so yeah, that's how, I studied international business. I taught myself, web design and just design in general. And then that's how I got into like Love Pixel agency a couple years later, starting a web design and web development agency. And now really supporting people who are in being in the business for several years, looking to kind of consolidate their offerings and just get the message out there, because I always tell everybody your message is your medicine. Like only you can tell your story. So yeah. So what's your message? What's your message? Like what is it that you want to carry out into the world? Because you do so many things. What would you say is your like this is who I am, this is the message I carry out? What would you say?
I think there are lots of aspects to it, but probably boiled down something along the lines of that it's of highest service to the world and to everyone around you, not only of yourself, to live the truth of your essence and your heart. And a lot of that has to do with more being, right? More connectedness, more openness to pleasure and enjoyment and joy. So I think there's so much doing in this world, and it's a lot of doing what we think we're supposed to do, right? And a lot of people have dreams that they think might not be possible. Um, and what I found over and over again with my clients and in so many situations, it's like when you are aligned within yourself and with your heart and your dreams, that is of highest service to everyone. And please do that thing. So how can you do that and how can you live in pleasure and joy? Because it doesn't necessarily have to be so painful and such a struggle as well.
Exactly. I feel the secret is to get in touch more with your joy. Like what really drives you internally, what brings you joy, what brings you excitement. And I feel a lot of times we feel just like you said, we need to do the thing that we think we need to do, but maybe that's not even it. You know what I mean? Like we think we need to do certain things, and what would happen if I would follow more the things that would actually be joyful for me?
Yeah, exactly. And I think actually we have no way to know what we can create, right? Because our mind is so limiting. So it's like, I think I need to do this. And while we're so busy trying to align everything to do this, it's like there could be a much grander possibility that we have. That's how my whole life has been, right? That we have no idea about. We couldn't even fathom with our minds. But we have to step into that openness and that possibility to open to all of that happening.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really beautiful. I'll tell you a beautiful example with my life in tea. So when I got into tea, obviously, at some point or throughout the years, I developed kind of just this passion for tea. But I was just at the World Tea Expo last week, and just like when you get into something, like the doorways they open, I never thought would have been there. So it's exactly what you say. It's like just go one step. Like I think there's this African proverb that says, "Go as far as you can see, and you will see further."
Mhm.
right? And that's kind of like how life is. Like, just go as far as you can see. You will see further, and then you can still say, "Do I even want to go further in that direction, or do I want to go slightly more to the left or to the right, or keep exactly on that path?" Because it's gonna show you more the intricacies of a certain industry, of a certain field, and you can then still pick and choose and go in any different timeline or variation of living your life that you choose.
Exactly. And I mean, that was how I ended up moving to Egypt in the first place. Originally, I came here just for a trip with one of my mentors, and I wasn't fully sure about the trip. It was during the end of the lockdown, and when I decided to go, I met with a friend and told him that I was going to Egypt, and he said, "Oh, well, my friend's here actually. She's visiting Maui, so you should meet her." So we went for coffee, and she said, "Oh, okay, I'll pick you up at the airport, and you can stay with me for a few days." And all of a sudden I had this openness, right? And then I messaged another friend who I knew lives somewhere else in Egypt. I had no idea where, and she was like, "No, I'm going to be in Turkey, but you can stay in my house." So it was like all of these things started opening, but I had to say yes first also too, right? I had to be willing to step into that, and then all of these doors opened, and ultimately I ended up moving my whole life here because this is where I feel that I'm meant to be right now.
Wow, that's so wonderful. And I love that. And I think, you know, you live like your dream life. You know what I mean? And nobody else can. Like, if somebody wants to go to Egypt, yeah, please go to Egypt, right? But doesn't mean that the version that you live is their version. You know, like, everybody needs to discover their own version, right? We can just inspire people to discover theirs, right? And I think your life is such a beautiful testament of what can happen when you say yes, and like the doorways that open and open and open. And so it's really wonderful, and I think that's amazing, so how, like, why would you say, like, why Egypt, like, why Egypt versus like Bali or whatever, Guatemala, like the popular digital nomad spot, Latin America, or why that?
So originally it was for a trip that I came to the different temples and sacred sites with one of my mentors. And then at the end of that trip, I actually ended up testing positive for COVID. So I had to quarantine officially in a hotel with the government. And during that time, a woman contacted me and wanted to learn more about birth support. She was giving birth. And so we had a consultation, and there was part of me as well that was a little bit resistant to being in Cairo because Cairo, I don't know if you know or have been, but it is a huge, chaotic city. And I had been living on Maui, so it was literally the opposite experience. So coming into Cairo, it was a lot for my nervous system, and it was so different that I didn't know if I actually wanted to be here. And so we had our consultation, and I told her, talk to lots of people, go away and think about it. When you work with someone in a birth, it's a very intimate experience. So from both sides, it has to be an exact or direct alignment for me. And she came back and she said, "We'd really like you to be our doula." So I decided to go to Cairo to be on call for that birth. And then I ended up supporting another person in birth. And actually, it was very interesting because one of those first births, they were in the hospital. They were water births in the hospital. And one of the doctors came to me and he said, "I would really like you to organize a panel of doulas because we have a problem with cesareans in Egypt. The rate is too high. We need to change this somehow." And for me, that was a little bit like, ooh, like I just arrived in Egypt and who am I to have that conversation, and all of these things, but it was all of these doors were opening. It was an
Yeah.
incredible experience. And all of a sudden, all of these people wanted support with birth, with sexuality, with relationships. And it's interesting because there actually is an element where, because I am a foreigner, in some ways, there are Egyptian local women that feel more comfortable sharing certain things with me because I come from a different background, because I have different training. So there were so many signs and signals to me, many in the form of opportunities and connections, that were just telling me, like, there's a lot happening here. And I'm in a phase of life where I'm really excited about creation and projects. And so all of these projects started happening really quickly. Potential birth center, ways to support community, ways to support the women. There's a beautiful, strong international, but also very local community here as well around holistic healing. And so I kind of had this sense inside of myself, okay, there might be something shifting. And it was confirmed when I went back to Hawaii, because Hawaii is such a beautiful place and it's so healing, but things move much more slowly in Hawaii, right? So it's not always the place to create or have things move quickly, some of these things. So the birth center, for example, there wasn't really moving forward. Things in the United States around birth, there's different laws, right, that are being passed and things are kind of shifting. So it was just really clear that Egypt is the place for me to be right now, because there's desire for me to be of service and support, and all of the doors were opening. And so it was really a lot of direct listening. And I actually had a lot of resistance to being in Cairo because of the ways that it was so different initially. And ultimately, I ended up going and getting my things and moving back here. And now it's been about 2 years, and it's definitely, I feel so aligned with where I'm meant to be right now in my life.
Wow, beautiful. So,
Mhm.
what were some of the initial like struggles, or how did you make money? Did you have like savings or transitioning into that career, or just like how did that whole thing, go about? Because I think that's always a fascinating point to talk about. Like when you walk on a path like this, that is sometimes maybe not the most, financially abundant in the beginning. So yeah, share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So initially, when I quit my corporate job, I did have some savings, not a significant amount, but I also had stocks and some of these things. So that was also kind of when I was transitioning as well to start coaching. So I was doing some coaching on the side. And then when I started going to massage school, I was offering services at a really reduced rate. So it's kind of like at each step of the way, I was presented with opportunities to bring in income in different ways or to be supported. And there were some times, right, where I felt fearful or I wasn't sure how something was going to work. But in the end, it always did work out. And, at certain points as well, there was a time where I got a job and I was employed by a wonderful man who was offering Vipassana based silent meditation courses, right? So there were different spaces in my life where I was able to bring in income while studying, but this income was also much more aligned with my path. And so slowly, it kind of transitioned between me working for others in different capacities, whether that was consulting or body work or coaching, to a place where now I'm fully working for myself.
Wow, beautiful. And how long would you say did it take you to get to, I would say, where you could fully sustain yourself?
So I quit the corporate world about 5 years ago now. So I would say probably about 3 years where I was working for others in some capacity as an independent contractor, as a consultant. But now my income is solely through my different ventures and through coaching and things like that.
Beautiful. Amazing. And how wonderful it is, to hear another testimony of that. Kind of like the universe always has you back, right? I
Mhm.
felt the same way when I came to America, which was 7 years ago, because, I'm originally from Germany. And I came here with, I think it was $1,570. I still have the receipt from Chase Bank in my folder somewhere. And it's just incredible how it all worked out. Like I met my now wife. We married, had a child very quickly. It was like way too fast for me. Um, but I was like, I trust the universe. Like this is supposed to, and it really helped me to become a man. Like to make an
Mhm.
income, build a foundation, build a family. Like that was so important for me at that stage in my life. So I'm really grateful for that phase of my life, and how also everything worked out. So, beautiful to hear that it did the same in your life. And it's just so hard for some people that are maybe looking into quitting their job or transitioning their career, like to make that step, because it's a scary step. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, and I also just want to share around that I remember in the transitionary periods where sometimes I would talk to friends who were previous classmates, right, who are still in the corporate world, and I came away with such gratitude because they were more stressed out about money than I was, right? And they were bringing in hundreds of thousands of dollars and had the investments and had all the things. and they had more anxiety and stress about money, and I just felt so free, you know? And it was like I knew that I would figure it out, or that I would be supported, or that somehow it would work out. And that was a really big insight for me as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. Like the energy that comes with that freedom is just, it's priceless. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Being free is really, it's a very beautiful feeling.
Mhm.
Um, so let's talk a little bit about like your online presence. When did you decide to have a website in those, I would say, journey of like 5 years since you quit your corporate career?
I would say probably about 3 years ago. So once I was starting to do the sexuality and relationship stuff, in one of the mentorships that I did, we had support to help us make a website with that. And that was such a gift. And it's kind of continued and evolved from that space.
They're so beautiful. I love that. And that website you still have today, or did you change?
In terms of aesthetics, it's changed, but it's the same kind of, it was on WordPress and it was saracousineau.com. And now I manage it myself and it looks quite different, but it's the same URL.
Okay, sweet, great. And for like when you initially built your website, you built it yourself, correct?
Initially, someone from the mentorship built it on WordPress, which was amazing. And then I would say probably a year after that, I started to do it myself on Squarespace and transition some of it.
Okay, great. And what would you say is like I don't know the tricky parts about technology because like hearing you talk about you seems like you started out on WordPress, which I know is a little bit more a platform with a steeper learning curve than Squarespace. So tell us a little bit about like what you liked or didn't like about both these platforms.
Yeah, I think for me around technology, whenever it feels overwhelming, that's almost like the biggest piece, right? So if it's going to prevent me from even wanting to go in or do something, then the question is, okay, what's the solution for that? So with WordPress, it was kind of like something that I knew at this point in time, I didn't want to dedicate the time to learn it, or kind of have someone else do it at that point in time. It felt important to have sovereignty over it and some ability to go in and change things. So I knew that Squarespace felt doable for me. So that's what made me make the shift. And then being willing to just go in and do small things at a time, right? Because in a big sense, things can feel overwhelming, but being willing to just take one step at a time and be okay with that. Like not needing to have everything perfect before you launch or before you go live or before you do whatever. And I think that applies to kind of everything as well in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, yeah, that's really important. That's also what we see with our clients a lot. Um, I mean, obviously, when somebody comes to us and books something, you want to have it perfect, right? But when you start out, like, it doesn't need to be perfect, you know? Like, literally, just choose a font that looks somewhat good and colors that you feel somewhat align, right? Because
Yeah,
you can still go back and change and, redesign and refresh stuff. Um, I think the most important step in the beginning is just to get it out there,
exactly.
because again, your message is your medicine. And if you just keep holding it back from being shared with the world, then yeah, you're just holding yourself back. So yeah, I love that. And how did you decide on like colors and fonts on your website, for example? Like how did that come about?
So initially, there were a lot of colors and it was very bright. And then because I had a bunch of different places where my visuals were from, like they were from the ocean and the desert. Like initially when I was in Hawaii, it was all kind of like Hawaii color schemed. And then later that shifted, so it felt better to me to have black and white photos that felt cohesive.
Mm,
And the gold color that I chose it felt like it went well with the black and white. It also felt kind of ancient to me. So being in Egypt, it's like this dust and this sand and the pyramids, right? So there's an ancientness to the sacred feminine. And there's also a luxury and a valuing of it. So those are all kind of aspects of my brand and what I feel is important, and that's how it ended up coming together.
Beautiful. And so once you have a website, right, you want to see that you get some people to that website somehow. So how did people find you? Was it more like local? Was it online? Did you do a little bit of social media? Did you start a newsletter? YouTube? Like, can you tell us a little bit more about your, I would say, content, or like how you attracted people to your site in the beginning and now?
Yeah. So honestly, a lot of my business, a lot of my clients come through referrals, which is amazing. So through the networks that I've built over the years, through the programs that I've done, I get a lot of referrals, and they then come to the website and book with me. I also have a small social media presence on Instagram, and I do have a weekly newsletter that I send out every Monday called Your Weekly Turn On. So it's a compilation of really yummy like songs and poems and self-care practices and visuals, mainly for women, that they get every Monday. And then from that, there's also opportunities to work with me. So it's kind of like all tied in together in those different places: the website, the Instagram, and the newsletter.
Beautiful. And what would you say is like your favorite program or your favorite activity within your um, ecosystem, or like just something that you love doing and like hanging out with your people and yeah, creating and I don't know, yeah.
I love so many of them. Something that I've been excited about recently, though, is my program called 12 Days of Pleasure. So, this was something that I ran live in December, and now I've made it into an evergreen course that can be accessed at any time. But it's from what we talked about a little bit before in terms of everyone is so busy doing, right? So when I'm working with women on connecting to their bodies, on connecting to their pleasure, to their joy, to having a more fulfilling experience in their bodies every day, a lot of people don't know how to do that because there's so much disconnection, right? So it's like really slowing everything down and cultivating the quality of beingness through all of the senses, through smell, through sight, through sound, through taste, right? To allow yourself to start to cultivate this way of being in the world where you make choices based on what feels good and what feels aligned for you. And I've had a couple women go through this recently, and it feels really powerful and potent. So I love that. I love getting women connected to their pleasure.
Yeah, yeah, it's really a sacred value of bringing kind of like this balance of the masculine and feminine onto the planet, basically,
Mm.
right? And yeah, a friend of mine was asking me. I was 2 weeks ago. I was in Guatemala, and he was like, "So, what do you actually do?" Well, we build websites, right? Um, but there's so much more to it because our mission with Love Pixel Agency is to make love tangible, right?
Mm.
To really kind of like bring the feminine back online because
Mhm.
technology is so boxy and it's so like because like I would say the base frequency of technology is just more masculine than it is feminine, right? It's all
Mhm.
these letters and codes and boxes. I mean, even now, like our video is like in a box, and here the button is in a box, and then, everything's in a box.
Yeah.
um, so, one thing I'm really excited about when I work with people is just how can we bring your organic essence onto a digital canvas, right?
Mm.
And yeah, it's always such an honor to distill that essence with someone because everybody's so unique, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just cool and a blessing to honor people with that process of like who are you expressed, right? Um, yeah. So
I love that. That's so beautiful.
thank you. Yeah, I mean, we all can like make love tangible in a different way, right?
Yeah.
Like ours happens to be websites and stuff like that. Um, but we all have this connection to source, to love. It's just what do we decide to channel and give this vessel to? Like right now in my
Mhm.
life, like the three areas I give most of my vessel to is web design branding, which is the agency, right? Then I have tea, which I also have a tea brand, right? Because I love it so much. I want to like make it a business. I want it part of my daily life and more than
Mm.
just drinking it sometimes. And then the third one is spirituality. I love
Mm.
anything that has to do with the connection to spirit, because I feel it's such an inherent part of who we are as human beings. And if we don't honor that connection, it just feels like we're living only 80% of our life, or maybe even less. Right? I feel like life is so spiritual. Once you get into it, you see how everything is just so like energetic and connected and based on, yeah, energetics. It's really, really fascinating. I was talking to a previous podcast guest. Her name is Eileen, and she does biofield tuning. So she has her own tuning forks, and she goes into your energetic field and releases blockages. And I mean, it's just incredible. Like, there's
Mm.
so many different cool techniques, and it's
Yeah.
just amazing. I love that we all kind of like are stepping up at this time in the human, history or moment, and change the timeline to the one that we actually want to live. Like, I feel there's so much of this happening. Um, so it's really cool to see.
Yeah. This beautiful network all over the world.
Yeah, it's incredible. So talking about humans, let's talk about AI. What do you think about
Mm.
AI?
Mm. I think AI is interesting. And I know that I have some friends and I've heard about some spaces where they're actually trying to create like a feminine expression, a more feminine expression of using AI. So I'm interested to see how that comes out. And I also do not have too much experience with it because a lot of my work is kind of hands on, in person, in gatherings and experiences. So I'm interested to see what will be created for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a wonderful development. And again, it's just, I would say, because it's not organic. Like, the feminine is organic. We are organic. Humans are organic, right? We are kind of the best organism out there.
Mhm.
Um, we're very, very smart. Our system is self healing. I mean, there's so many cool features about this body that we rarely even recognize, right? We're like, oh yeah, I hurt myself. Of course, it's gonna heal. Really? Wow, where does that come from? Um, so yeah, organisms, humans are organic, right? And AI is just, it's just like technology, right? It's just primarily, again, it's like this primarily masculine. So, which is not bad. It's just like, again, find the balance.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think that's the invitation for so many things in our lives, is to find that balance between the divine masculine and divine feminine. And yeah, it's really cool to see how everything, is developing. And when you look at your, I would say, friend circle or colleagues, or do you see do you see the same thing happening? Are more people kind of like stepping a little bit out of their corporate container, starting their own stuff? What do you think? Where is it leading to?
I think so. I think a lot of people are kind of at the point where maybe they've experienced many years in the corporate world and now they're kind of reflecting on whether this is something that they want to continue doing for the rest of their lives, right? I think during the times of Corona, that was a big period of reflection for a lot of people as well, and a lot of people that I know have pivoted during that time. So, or, right, there are as well the people who continue doing their corporate job in some capacity and then start a side project that allows them to fulfill their passions. So I think there are kind of different journeys that people are choosing to get to where they want to go, and they're trying it out. Um, but ultimately, yeah, I would love for everyone to explore that in some way, right? If they're not feeling fulfilled in their current space. So I'm a big proponent of, if you're not fulfilled or connected to your joy, right? Or you have a dream, right? That there's something for you in that. So please take the time and energy to explore it for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. That's this one book that talks about, how there's like 7 or 8, billion people on the planet. So that means there should be 7 or 8 billion businesses, right? So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
cool. That's a cool little visual.
Yeah.
Um, But so for me, I think one thing I would really love for you to talk about more is how you maintain your balance in your daily lives, or if you have any like tips and tricks and like maybe some sort of uh, allies or substances, like things like I love tea. Like tea really keeps me balanced and just aligned all the time. Is there anything you want to share with us in terms of like routines and any any ingredients to your life that make it extra special?
Yes, for sure. So I prioritize being often, and that looks differently in different spaces and places. But one key aspect of that is that I'm very connected to my cycle as a woman. So my monthly cycle, during different phases of my cycle, I live very differently. And for example, when I have my monthly bleed, I'm resting as much as possible. So I find for lots of women that if we're able to give ourselves that period of rest, then it creates a more sustainable cycle for us. And we can have more energy at other parts of our cycle. And there's certain parts that are great for creation. There's certain parts that are great for moving our bodies in certain ways, right? And the way that I eat, the way that I move, the way that I rest, all of that is kind of dependent on where I am in that cycle.
Beautiful. So honoring your cycle
Mm-hmm.
um, is something very important and beautiful. What's something else you could say? Somebody that I would say, let's say somebody's sitting in a corporate job setting and they're like about to, make that transition, or maybe next year's like maybe you could start this or look into that. Like, is there anything you would like? What would you advise them, or is there any tips?
Yeah, I would advise them or encourage them to create space for themselves, right? So for some people, that might look like a meditation practice, right? For some people, that literally might be like give yourself 5 minutes to just be with yourself, right? And give yourself permission rather than thinking of all the things that you need to do or what's going on or any of the other things, but just really allowing yourself to sit and be with yourself, tune into your body, see how you're feeling, see what you need, right? Connect to your heart, connect to what's going on. For women, you can connect to your womb. So it's like whatever is the minimum amount of space that you're able to create for yourself, I would start with that. Because, sorry, go ahead.
And why space? Like, why is that so like?
Because I think we're so caught up in the doing and we have so many to-do lists, right? So this is the same with my clients where oftentimes, I'm like, I can give you practices and exercises, and I do, right? But if they're coming into the practices and exercises as just another thing to check off the list, they're not actually being embodied or integrating. They're just kind of doing it from the mind-based perspective, and they're not going to get the results that they want from the practice or the exercise. So it's like for lots of people, I find that it's because we're so disconnected from our bodies, it's learning how to drop back into our bodies and our awareness and our ultimately our intuition, right? Because I totally believe we have everything that we need inside of ourselves. We can learn how to tap into our intuition, our knowing, how to become our own oracle, our own channel, right? And figure out what we need and even what we need to do. But we need that space to allow us to disconnect from all the external inputs and come back to ourselves.
Hmm, beautiful. And why the access to our body? Like, why is like what leads what awaits us there? Like our inner wisdom. You said that connection that has all the answers, pretty much.
In the space,
Yeah. So in the space, we can create a connection, like with ourselves, with our bodies, right? And then we create space for that connection, is what I
mm-hmm.
understood.
Yeah.
Um, and why? Like, where would that bring me? Why would I do that?
So ultimately, it's ironic because in some ways we want to do that without an end goal, right? But I know that often people need a goal. But it's in that space that I find that's where we're connected to, for example, the next step, right? It's like in that space where suddenly we might receive the message of like apply to this job, right? Or call this person. Someone might come into your awareness. Or in that space, someone might actually reach out to you, right? So it's like there's all these ripples and so much happening, often in chaos around us, that we often don't know where to go or what to do because there's so many options, right? We have so many choices in life, and that can be really confusing, especially from the mental space. So if we're able to disconnect from all of that and tune into ourselves, then it becomes really clear what's right for us. And for lots of people, it's a really like beginning step, right? Of even like, oh, I notice I'm hungry, or I'm dehydrated, or I have to use the bathroom, because many people are not addressing their bodily needs. We kind of put everything on the back burner because we have to go, go, go and do all the things, right? But once we come into a space even of deeper connection, that's when the insights come of, ooh, there's this creative solution to this problem, or ooh, there's a product, or ooh, that's the name of my next program, right? So it's like in this space is where honestly for me the magic happens, and for so many of my clients.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think the space is really magic, and I love how you bring this like feminine container and energy of just being to, because again, it's again about that balance. It's like, yeah, go into being, you can then go into doing again, but you go into it differently, right? You come from a different
Exactly.
space. Like you're basically saying, okay, let me step 5 minutes or 2 minutes into a being state, which is a different timeline than keep working on a computer or whatever else you're doing, and then you step back into life, and all of a sudden you're living in a different timeline. Like you literally just changed your life.
Yeah,
And I think sometimes to make it that visceral for people is what it takes for them to understand what they're actually doing, right? Because you
yeah,
are then from this space making different choices. You may not shout at your child, or you may not, whatever it is that you do, and just like live a better version because you just came from this place that is more aligned with your truth.
exactly. And from a business context, right, it can be like you could send 100 emails to the wrong people, right? And that's going to take a lot of time. Or you could send one email to Christian and it's the right person and all the doors are now open,
Hmm.
right? So it's like, it's also collapsing for me a lot of the timelines and the effort and making everything more efficient, because you're now coming from an aligned place and not wasting your time and energy on all the things that you think might be helpful, but they're really not.
So true. Yeah. That's really something I noticed too. Is like literally like when you choose love, when you choose yourself, when you choose truth, when it really comes from a place of like, I love this so much, I want to do this because I love it kind of thing, or like whatever. It doesn't have to be exactly that, but like it comes from a place of your heart, right? If you choose that all the time, you're basically collapsing time because you spend less time doing bullshit that your mind tells you need to execute and do. So it's really, yeah, I think it's like the fast track to healing and enlightenment is to choose your heart at any given moment. So yeah, thank you for bringing that to the podcast, and we're coming towards the end of our episode. Is there anything else you would like to share with the listeners, and then of course, yeah, where people can find you and how they can connect with you?
Absolutely. So I would just say, if there's something that's on your heart, or you have a dream or a vision, please go do it, because you have no idea what magic will come from it for you, for the rest of the world. It's so important. And you're not alone. There's a world of community who is ready and willing to help you in that. And I can be found on my website, www.saracousineau.com, or on my Instagram page, Witness of Miracles.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for blessing us with your grace, with your wisdom, with your insight, with your passion, with your love, and with everything that you do and are. And yeah, it's been such an honor. Thank you so, so much, Sarah.
Thank you, Christian. It's been my pleasure.
All right. Bye for now.